श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः। So we continue with the exposition of the Mumuksupadi, which is the commentary on the three principal mantras that a Sri Vaishnava is supposed to get initiated into and also chant incessantly. Among them, the first mantra is known as Thiru Mantra, and the exposition of the Thiru Mantra or the meanings of the Thiru Mantra of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra will start from this sutra. So before going to the next sutra, we have to cover a few aspects that were remaining to be understood as far as the 27th sutra is concerned. That is, Phalamirittum Padi Prameya Shekharittinam Archiradigatinam Shannom. So presently, what we are discussing is that what is the nature of the fruits or results a person attains once the Ashtakshara Mahamantra has become consummated to him. Earlier we also discussed about the Artha Panchaka or the five-fold principle, which is Prapyasya Brahmano Rupam, that is the nature of the Supreme Lord who is to be attained by us. Praptushcha Pratyagatmanaha, the nature of the individual soul, that is we ourselves. Praptyupayam, the nature of the means of the individual soul attaining the Supreme Soul, that is Lord Narayana. And Phalam Prapte, what is the result of the individual soul attaining the Supreme Lord. And also Prapti Virodhi, the impediments that prevent a Jivatma from proceeding in the spiritual path and attaining the Supreme Lord. So these are the five-fold principles which are known as Artha Panchaka. And it was mentioned earlier that the Ashtakshara Mahamantra deals with these five-fold principles in a very detailed and extensive manner. And the nature of all these five have been explained by Pilladokacharya also and commented upon by the great Pranava Mamuni who succeeded Pilladokacharya. Probably he appeared in this world about 80 to 100 years after Pilladokacharya. Here in the 27th Sutra, Swami Pilladokacharya mentions that we have mentioned about the nature of the results of the individual soul attaining the Supreme Soul in a work called Prameya Shekhara. As we all know, Pilladokacharya authored Ashtadasha Rahasyas, or 18 different treatises on which are known as the Rahasya Granthas. The word Rahasya refers to a secret. So these were actually secretly given from the Acharya or the preceptor to the disciple or Shishya regularly. And as such, these were not committed to writing. That is why these are known as the Rahasya Granthas. But over a period of time, due to the deterioration in the mentality of people, the human beings, there was no other way other than committing these very secretive teachings to writing and make it into the form of a formal treatise, because people started to lose faith gradually due to so many factors like the advancing of the Kali Yuga, wherein most of the people are interested only in material pursuits and not in spiritual pursuits. Therefore, these had to be committed to writing, and this tradition started nearly 700 years ago. Today, it has deeply deteriorated, but only because it was committed to writing by the great acharyas like Pilladokacharya and Manavana Mamni, we are still able to know the concepts that form the bedrock of Sri Vaishnava philosophy. So here Pilladokacharya says the nature of the results of the individual soul attaining the Supreme Soul have been explained in detail in Prameya Shekhara, in a work called Prameya Shekhara, and also Archiradigati. These are two works which are very important as far as these issues are concerned. But though the work Prameya Shekhara is available to us in print format, and though the work Archiradigati is available to us in print format, probably people like us, we will not be very eager to go to the work and see what has been mentioned there. Oh, yes, fine. If it is mentioned in Prameya Shekhara, fine, we are very happy. We will feel like that because we are not so inquisitive to know what has been mentioned in that work. But the commentator Swami Manavana Mamni, he takes great pains and he summarizes what has been mentioned in the Prameya Shekhara and Archiradigati that is relevant to the current context. Because many a times what happens, people will not be very much, even for example, a person like me who is supposed to have studied all these things in a formal and in the Gurukula system of education. So it has been mentioned in Prameya Shekharam, fine. Yeah, I understand. We say I understand or I appreciate it and leave it at that. Will I immediately read that work and refer to the place where it has been mentioned and will I read it? Generally, people will not do that. Therefore, Swami Manavana Mamani has actually summarized what has been mentioned there. பரவேஷந்தாதிருக்கும்படி எங்கனே என்ன அருளிச் செய்கிறார் பரமிருக்கும்படி என்று தொடங்கி, அதாவது இவ்வாத்மாவுக்கு பிராபியமான பலன்தான் அர்ச்சிராதி மார்க்கத்தாலே பரமபதத்திலே போய் பரிபூர்ண பகவத் அனுபவத்தை பண்ணி அவ்வனுபவ ஜனித பிரீத்தி பிரேரிதனாய் கொண்டு பண்ணும் அசேஷ சேஷ விருத்தியாகையாலே அதிருக்கும்படியை சங்கிரகேண பிரமேய சேகரமாகிற பிரபந்தத்திலும் விஸ்தரேண அர்ச்சிராதிகதியாகிற பிரபந்தத்திலும் விஷதமாகச் சொன்னோம், அவத்திலே கண்டு கொள்வது என்கை. So this aspect has also been mentioned in detail in the Sri Bhashya of Acharya Ramanuja. How the Jivatma who has had the experience of the Paramatma or the Supreme Soul travels to the supreme abode of Lord Narayana, that is known as Vaikuntha. So actually, the Upanishads also mention about this in great detail. And it is to be noted that one very important point is to be noted that though we all tell that all Sri Vaishnavas definitely they go to Paramapada only, it has been very specifically mentioned that a Sri Vaishnava means one who has had the vision of the Supreme Lord in this body only. While the individual soul is residing in this body. Only for them it applies. That has been very clearly delineated in the Sri Bhasha. But we believe that since when a person actually acquires the Pancha Samskara, the Samashrayanam from his Acharya, he definitely attains moksha in this manner only. But that is only the beginning of the beginning, because there is a huge path that has to be followed if this has to really happen. But generally, many a times what happens while giving discourses, scholars do not mention about that aspect because it is very complicated one. And second thing, they want people to get some faith in this. So sometimes little exaggeratedly also they will tell this. So it was a very beautiful example is given in this regard. So suppose a person wants to acquire a PhD degree. He approaches a professor and the professor advises him, you first have to enroll yourself in a university and then you have to go through the registration process, etc., by which you will acquire a PhD degree. Is this statement correct or wrong? Definitely it is correct. Because if you have to actually get a degree that is recognized by people all over the world, by the other universities or by the companies that hire or things like that, the university has to be a reputed university. It should be properly constituted as per law. It should be eligible to grant degrees. And then there one has to enroll, because without enrollment, without any registration, a PhD degree cannot be granted. So it is like saying if you get registration, you will acquire the degree. This statement is totally correct. But mere registration does not guarantee your degree. Because then you have to do research work. Then you have to actually submit the thesis. You have to prepare a thesis or whatever, a dissertation or whatever it is called. Then it has to go to the examiners. The examiners have to actually approve it, saying that it is fit for award of a research degree. Then you have a Viva OCR where the oral examination is conducted. And then actually a notification is issued by the university stating that this thesis has been accepted for the award of the degree of PhD to the candidate whoever has done the research work. So those who are familiar with academics anywhere in the world, they are familiar with this process. But we actually first state, if you have to get a degree, you have to actually enroll and register yourself as a research scholar or a research candidate or whatever it is. But afterwards also so many processes are there which have to be taken care of. If even one process or one formality is not complete, you will not get the degree. Similarly, here also after getting Samashrayana from the Acharya, after duly doing Sharanagati, in whatever manner, then you have to follow certain principles in life and also engage in certain practices. So many a times Sri Vaishnava Acharyas say that you should not do anything. as a sadhana or as a means. You should not engage in any practice which actually has to be understood in the proper spirit. It means that you should not do anything with the mindset that you are achieving something or you are doing something that will be for which you will get a commensurate result. Because the sadhanas are the means that we employ or we follow are actually nothing compared to the result of moksha that we get. That has to be explained in great detail. I am not going to that. So having done that, so whether it is bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, or whatever it is, or prapatti yoga, as we Sri Vaishnavas call it in this context, after following the path of prapatti, because even prapatti has its own stages. It says, anukulyasya sankalpaha, pratikulyasya varjanam, rakshishyati iti vishwasaha, goptritva varanam tatha, atmanikshepa karpanye, shadvidha sharanagati. Shadvidha means not 6 types, 6 stages of sharanagati or prapatti or surrender exist. And a Sri Vaishnava who has surrendered, he has to go through all these steps. Unless these steps are gone through, the sharanagati or prapatti will not be complete. That I will explain later because that will come in the course of the text only, but this is very important. So when some acharyas or scholars, Sri Vaishnava scholars say you should not do anything, you have to add a clause to it stating that you should not do anything which you think will be a means to attain moksha. So it is mentioned as sadhanatva buddhiyade. You should not think that you are engaging in some means that will get you the results. So without thinking that you are engaging in some means, you have to do it without any particular aim or objective in mind, because you have to do it kevala as Bhagavad Kaikarya or as Bhagavad Prityartha. There is minor difference among the 2 sampradayas of Sri Vaishnavism. That doesn't, it is not totally against each other or different from each other. Because unless a person has love or Bhagavad Priti, he cannot engage in Kaikarya. Unless a person does service, Priti will not come or love or affection will not come. So that is why it is mentioned as na akinchit kurvataha sheshatvam. Suppose a person says, I am your servant, and he does not do anything that the master likes, can he be called as a servant? So he can be called as a servant, or he can be treated as a servant, or the master may shower his love and affection on his servant only when the servant acts as a real servant does. That means he should do everything that the master asks him to do. Otherwise, he will not be called as a servant. Many times what happens in Sri Vaishnava parlance, they will say adiyen. Adiyen means I am your servant. And Dasa also, we have, as Sri Vaishnavas, all of us have Ramananda Dasa or Madhurakavi Ramananda Dasa, etc., etc., etc. So adiyen is the Tamil version of the form or the word Dasa, which both are equal. Dasa is the Sanskrit word and adiyen is the English Tamil word. So very beautifully, a great scholar used to give an example. So since Keshav Dasji has stayed in Srirangam, he will be able to enjoy this. So many a times on certain occasions, Lord Ranganatha will actually come to the banks of Kaveri, that is the processional deity, who is known as Namberumal. He will come to a place called Amma Mantapam, which is on the banks of the Kaveri in Srirangam. And the Abhishekam or ritual bath of the Lord deity, presiding deity, that is Namberumal, will take place there. So when after the main Abhishekam is over, the internal Abhisheka, that is, it is not done in front of everybody. The screen will be actually closed, and inside the what we call as the Antaranga Abhisheka will take place. So at that time, some more that holy water will be required to be brought from Kaveri. So outside, so many Sri Vaishnavas will be staying there. So one of the Archakas or the Pujaris will come outside and say, "Sir, can you kindly bring one pot of water from the Kaveri?" Then certain people will not like this because they have their own sense of ego. They are not mentioning about any particular individual. But it is natural for people to have their egos. So he says, "Poi Tirtha kindly bring, sir, help me by bringing a pot of water from the river." It's about 20-25 steps downwards. Then the person will say, "Did you get this servant only for offering the service? Why don't you ask somebody else?" So in this context, using the word adiyen or your servant is totally incorrect. Because will a servant say, "Why are you asking me to do it? Why don't you ask another servant?" Then if he says so, then he cannot be qualified to be called as a servant. So it is very important that we inculcate that sense of servitude to the Supreme Lord. This is very, very, very important. And perform all the rituals, all the prescribed aspects with love and affection to the Supreme Lord. And then so many processes have to happen by which one attains the grace of the Lord, and also he will attain the vision or darshana or sakshatkara of the Supreme Lord. Then he actually becomes a real Sri Vaishnava. From then only the process of bhakti really starts. So that is why Yamunacharya says in his Gita-artha Sangraha that Swadharma Jnana Vairagya Sadhya Bhaktyeka Gochara. So bhakti or devotion unto the Lord is of two types. The bhakti, that devotion we do as of now, before we have the vision of the Supreme Lord, is of a very inferior quality. But definitely it is required. Why? Why is it required? It is required because we have to attain the vision or the real knowledge about the nature of the Supreme Lord. That is why it is prapyasya brahmano rupam. The real nature of the Supreme Lord is what we have to know. The bhakti or devotion we are supposed to have towards the Supreme Lord now is known as sadhana bhakti. The bhakti that is the means to knowledge of the nature of the Supreme Lord. And once you have the knowledge, once you acquire that knowledge, then you start loving him, then you have more devotion towards him. That is known as sadhya bhakti. That is the result of the sadhana bhakti. These are all very, very subtle nuances. Nuance itself is subtle. I am mentioning subtle nuances of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya because these type of subtle nuances do not exist in other Sampradaya as far as I know. So, when this happens, when he acquires the knowledge of the Supreme Lord, when he acquires the knowledge of the true nature of the Supreme Lord, he becomes qualified to attain moksha. Then what happens? He travels through the Sushumna Nadi. That is a huge topic in Yoga Shastra, which we accept because it has been mentioned in the Brahma Sutras, it has been mentioned in the Upanishads, and it has been commented upon in the same manner by Bhagavad Ramanujacharya also in the Shibhasha. So the Sushumna Nadi is said to be in this, located at the end of the Sushumna Nadi, is, or a specific yogic path, I would like to put it like that, exists in this, in what is known as the Brahma Rantra, or the topmost portion of the head. And the Jivatma, or the individual soul, has to leave the body through the Sushumna Nadi. Then only he becomes eligible to attain moksha. Until then, if the individual soul does not leave or does not pass through the Sushumna Nadi out of this body, he will not be able to attain moksha. That has been very, very, very clearly mentioned in Sri Bhashya. And one who does so, he will travel through the Archiradi Marga. So in the Brahma Sutras, it says Archiradina tat prathitehe. And Pidlalokacharya has given that same name to the work itself. It is called Archiradigati. That is how the Jivatma, or the individual soul, travels from the body. A Jivatma who is qualified to attain moksha, that has to be underlined, because it is not underlined generally. People, the Sri Vaishnava scholars, they actually generalize this to a great extent, for reasons which I have explained earlier. Only such a person who proceeds from this body through the Sushumna Nadi, he travels through the Archiradi Marga. That has been beautifully explained in the work called Archiradigati. It has been explained in the Upanishads. It has been experienced by Nammalvar. That is the greatest uniqueness of Nammalvar, who was the premier most Alvar, because no person who has left this body will come back to say what happens or what happened. What happens after a Jivatma, or individual soul, leaves the body? Nobody knows. We have different accounts in the Bhagavad Gita, which says Jatasya dhruvo mrityuhu dhruvam janma mritasya. He dies, once again he is born as another person or another animal or whatever it is. But he attains another birth. And once again he dies, once again he is born. This is what Bhagavad Gita says with regard to ordinary people. For people who have had the, by performance of Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, etc., those who have had the vision of the Supreme Lord, they become Amrita. They transcend the cycle of births and deaths. How that happens? That is also mentioned. Tatra prayata gachanti brahma brahma vido janaha. Tatra prayataha brahma gachanti. So those people attain the Supreme Lord himself. Who? Brahma vidaha janaha. Those who have attained the knowledge of the Supreme Brahman will actually travel through that path and attain moksha or salvation. So that is known as Archiradi Marga. That is explained in detail in the Upanishads by the sages. And almost similarly, because minor differences are there between what has been mentioned in the by Nammalvar and also by what has been mentioned in the Upanishads, because each person's experience varies from the other. No two persons can ever have the same experience at any time. So each person's experience is totally unique. And even if a same person has two experiences, even they are totally unique, it is not same in all respects. Because the time is different, the place is different, etc. So the greatness of the Madhva, if I may put it so, is that it is a great surprise how he could actually, while possessing the body, while residing in a human body, how he could have the darshan or the vision of the Archiradi Marga, which is given in the decade called Shul Visham Manimuhi, Thoriyam Mulakina, etc., which is the penultimate 10 stanzas before he actually attains moksha. So it is probably for the benefit of ordinary people like us that the Lord gave that knowledge of the Archiradi Marga so that he could actually sing it in the form of stanzas for the knowledge of people like us who otherwise would not have known what it is. So, adavadu Archiradi Margattare Paramapadattile poi Paripurna Bhagavad Anubhavattai Panni. So he has to proceed through the Archiradi Marga or the path known as Archiradi, which is once again explained in detail, but probably not, it is beyond our comprehension as of now, because we can understand only it based on some analogies, etc. Archiradi Margattile Paramapadattile poi Paripurna Bhagavad Anubhavattai Panni. And then it is all mentioned how he actually takes bath in a divine river called Viraja, where he actually loses all his material identities and he attains a divine body. He actually even gives up his Sukshma Sharira, which is all explained in great detail in the Vedanta Shastra. I will not go into it now. And then he attains a divine body, which is not like this body, which is Panchabhautika, made up of the 5 elements, and which has several types of fallacies and also unclean matter, etc. That body is divine and it is imperishable. This body is momentary, it is perishable, and it is totally worldly. It has got nothing to do with divinity. Of course, it is very important. This body is required for a person to have the vision of the Supreme Lord within this body only. But when compared to that body, which a person attains after taking bath in the Viraja Nadi or the river Viraja, this body is actually very inferior. Archiradi Margattare Paramapadattile poi Paripu. So he attains the portals of Vaikuntha. And Paripurna Bhagavad Anubhavattai Panni. He has the complete experience of the Supreme Lord. And due to that, what happens? Avanubhavajanita Priti Preritanai. So the bliss that he attains when he experiences the Supreme Lord is unsurpassed. That has been explained as Brahmananda, which I have explained earlier also. And there may be another opportunity to do so, as explained in the Upanishads. And due to that experience, he attains great devotion towards the Lord. Priti preri avanubhava janita priti preritanai kundu pannum ashesha pravritya heyare. So all these he engages in the service of the Lord. So this also I have explained earlier, how serving the Lord is not an issue that begets misery, like serving ordinary people. It begets great bliss. So, Priti Preritanai Kundu, it is voluntarily done and involuntarily done also in a way. Both voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary in the sense nobody is actually forcing him to do it. He does it on his own account. And I mention involuntarily in the sense he cannot control himself from engaging in the servitude of the Lord. So it is both voluntary and involuntary from the respective points of view. Priti preritanai kondu pannam ashesha shesha vrittya heyane. So he engages in continuous servitude of the Lord, which grants him eternal bliss. Adirukkum padiyai sangrahena prameya shekharamahira prabandhatilum. How that bliss is. Actually, it cannot be explained in words. But for us to get a glimpse of what it is, it has been explained in a very beautiful manner in Pillalokacharya's Prameya Shekhara in a concise manner. Prameya Shekharamahira prabandhatilum Vistareda Archiradikatya Hira Prabandhitilum. And it has been explained in great detail in the work called, the treatise called Archiradimar, Archiradikati. விஷதமாகச் சொன்னோம் அவத்திலே கண்டு கொள்வது என்கை. So he says, you please refer to those works. But it has been explained in sufficient for us to get a sufficient glimpse to this here by Swami Madhavanama Muni. So then we go to the 28th Sutra. So that is first introduced in this manner. Ini mantrathirke pratiparam arthamarudichaivadah thiruvullam patti prathamam idanudiya akshara sankheyam padasankheyam arudichaihirar. So now he comes, until now he has given a wonderful introduction to the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. What is the background? How did it come to us? What all does it say? What all does it include? What is its uniqueness, etc. Having done all these things, now he actually mentions about the individual components of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. I think that is the right word to mention it, because how many alphabets or syllables are there in the mantra? How many words are there? And why they are significant? What do they mean? So now he actually comes to explain the mantra itself. So what is the 28th Sutra? It is like this. Idadam yettu thiruvaksharamai moonru padamai irukkum. So the Ashtakshara Mahamantra contains, as the name itself says, 8 syllables and also 3 words. Idadam yettu thiruvaksharamai. It has 8 syllables and also, or you may call it as alphabets. I don't know which is the right word, or both may be correct. And moonru padamai irukkum. It contains 3 words. So this is commented upon by Madhavanama Muni in this manner. Adavade immantrantan omityekaksharam namaiti dve akshare narayanaiti pancha aksharani ityashtaksharam chandasa gayatri cheti omityagre vyaharet namaiti paschat narayanayetyuparishtat engirapadiye ettu thiruvaksharamai moonru padamai irukkum engai. So there is a beautiful treatise called, not treatise, a Vedic treatise rather, called the Narayana Upanishad or the Narayana Atharvashira Upanishad, which explains the supremacy of Lord Narayana. Along with explaining the supremacy of the Lord Narayana, it also explains the extent, and also the components of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. So it starts, and I am sure persons like Keshavadas would be familiar with this. Atha purusho havai narayano kamayata praja srideyeti narayanat prano jayate manas sarvendriyani cha kham vayurjyotirapah prithvi vishwasya dharini narayanat brahma jayate narayanat rudro jayate narayanat indro jayate Narayanat Prajapatayas Prajayante, etc., etc., etc. And also, Om Mathanityo Narayana, Brahma Narayana, Shivascha Narayana, Chakrascha Narayana, etc., etc. And in the third Anuvaka, the third section, it says Om Ityagre Vyaharet Namaiti Paschat Narayanayetyuparishtat. So it says first, the Pranava, the Omkara has to be chanted. Om Ityagre Vyaharet. So first you have to chant the Om, the mantra Om. Then Namaiti Paschat. Paschat means afterwards one has to chant Namaha. And Narayanayetyuparishtat. After that, the word Narayanaya has to be chanted. So Om Namo Narayanaya is the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. Then further it is explained in the as follows. Om ityekaksharam. Om is 1 syllable. Nama iti dve akshare. Nama is 2 syllables. Narayanaeti Panchaksharaणि. The word Narayana contains 5 syllables. So 5 plus 3 plus 2 is 8. Narayanaeti Panchaksharaणि. Etadvai Narayanasya Ashtaksharam Padam. Yo havai Narayanasya Ashtaksharam Padamadhyeti. Anapabhrava Sarvamayureti, etc. etc. Then it delineates the results of the person who has attained Siddhi or accomplishment of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. So these are the 8 syllables that form the Ashtakshara Mahamantra, and also 3 words, Om, Namaha and Narayanaya. So that has been mentioned in the Narayana Atharvashira Upanishad, which is a very, very, very important authentic text that all Shri Vaishnavas have to recite every day. So, idinudaya ashtaksharatvam shollu hiravidattile omityekaksharam endru pranavattai or aksharamahum nama iti dve akshare endru namassai irandaksharamahum Narayanayeti panchaksharaणि endru Narayana padattai anjaksharamahum Shruti sholluhayare. So the Vedas proclaim that the Ashtakshara Mahamantra contains Om, the first word Om having 1 syllable, the second word Namaha containing 2 syllables, and the third word Narayanaya containing 5 syllables, overall making it 8 syllables, due to which it is called as Ashtakshara Mahamantra. Ashta means 8, Akshara means syllables. So Ashtakshara Mahamantra means the Mahamantra, the greatest mantra that contains 8 syllables. Om, Namaha, Narayanaya. In this manner. Indra Narayana Padattai Anjaksharamaham Sholluhayare Samasta Padamana Narayana Padattil Nara Padattai Piritti Shadaksharamaki Pranavatte Yodiya Ashtaksharatvam Shollumavar Karudiya Paksham Avaidikamahyare Anadaraniyama Hakkadavadi. Here, one very important aspect is explained by Swami Manavala Mamni, which is very much to be noted. Some people, what they do is, they actually interpret this mantra or say that this mantra has only 6 syllables. So what they do is, it has been well mentioned here, Samasta Padamana Narayana Padattil Nara Padattai Piritti Shadaksharamaki Pranavatte Yodiya Ashtaksharatvam Sholluvavarhal. Some people, they actually split the word Narayana and they say Nara is separate, Ayana is separate. And they also leave out the Pranava and say that is how the Ashtakshara Mahamantra is formed, which is totally incorrect. Because that school of thought is Avaidikamahyane. That school of thought is not Vaidika. It is not according to the Vedic tradition. And therefore, Anadaraniyama Hakkadavadi. That such a school of thought should not be respected because it is not in accordance with the school of the Vedic thoughts. Then he comes to the 29th Sutra, which says, Moondru Padamam Moondarthattai Cholluhirade. The 3 words constituting the mantra, that is Om, Namaha and Narayanaya, actually delineate 3 important concepts or issues. Idil Mudal Padam Evarthatte Chonduhirade Engirava Ennumakan Shaile Moonu Padamum Idil Padatrevam Evarthatte Chonduhirade Engira Akan Shaile Moondu Padamum Moondarthatte Chonduhirade Engirar Avartham Tammai Visharamaha Rudichehira. So which are the 3 concepts explained by the 3 words? the 30th Sutra comes into play. Adavade Sheshattamam Paratantriyamam Kainkariyamam Yendre. The three concepts explained by the three words respectively are Sheshatva, subservience, Paratantriya, total dependence, and third aspect is Kainkarya or servitude. Swarupamam Swarupanurupamana Prapyamam Yendre Mudarchunnavakyartham Idaidanneire. So, what is the Swarupa, the nature of the individual soul? It is Sheshatva, that is, he is totally subservient. Then, since he is totally subservient, he is totally dependent on the Supreme Lord. Since he is totally dependent, what should he do? He should engage in the servitude of the Supreme Lord. So, this is what was mentioned earlier also. So, which is the first word among these three? That is given by the 31st Sutra, which says, Ipadatrayattilum prathama padantan yedenna. Among the three words, which is the first word? Idil mudal padam pranavam. The first word is the pranava or omkara. Om ityagre vyahare. So the first word that has to be chanted is Om. This has been mentioned in the Narayana Atharvashira Upanishad also, which we just saw or heard. And there also Smriti text which says, Pranavadyam namo madhyam narayana padantimam mantramashtaksharam vidyate sarvasiddhi karam rinam yennadire. So it very beautifully, the Smriti works also very beautifully say, Pranava Adyam. Adya means that which is situated in the beginning. So that which is in the beginning is the Pranava, that is Omkara. Namo Madhyam. The word in the middle is the word Namaha. And the last word of the final word is Narayanaya. So Pranava Adyam, Namo Madhyam, Narayana Pada Antibam. This is how the Ashtakshara Mahamantra is made up of three words. Mantram Ashtaksharam Vidyate. This is how one should understand the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. And what does it do? Sarvasiddhikaram Rinam. It begets all the good things, all the good accomplishments for human beings. That is what the Smriti text says. And further, ini pranavatirkku artham arudichayvadaha idinuடைய aksharathraya arudichayhira. So what is the meaning of Om? We talk about, we call the syllable Om as the greatest syllable on earth. The Upanishads proclaim and say so much about the word Om. In fact, it is translated as a synonym of the name of the Lord Narayana. That is another very important issue that one needs to understand. So, idu A ennum, U ennum, Ma ennum, moondru thiruvaksharam consists of three syllables, namely A, U, and Ma. In the Aksharatrayanuடைய Utpatti Kramattai Sadrishtantamaha Rudichayhira. Before that he says, இது ஆ என்னும் மூ என்னும் மா என்னும் மூன்று திருவக்ஷரம் பிரணவந்தான் அசம்ஹிதாகாரத்தாலே மூன்றக்ஷரமாய் மூன்று பதமாய் மூன்றர்த்த பிரகாசகமாய் சம்ஹிதாகாரத்தாலே ஏகாட்சரமாய் ஏகபதமாய் ஏகார்த்த பிரகாசகமாயிரே இருப்பது. Very beautifully, Swami Manavala Mamuni gives an exposition of what is the meaning of this syllable Om. So he says there are two methods of interpreting the meaning of the word or Pranava or Omkara. He says Samhitakara and Asamhitakara. Though it is a single syllable called Om, it is a combination of three important or three basic vowels, namely A, U, and also Ma, which is actually a consonant. 2 vowels and 1 consonant. The greatness of Pranava has been explained in thousands of pages in the Upanishads and their commentaries. Because from the point of view of Yoga Shastra, it is a very, very, very important aspect, because it says Tasya Vachakaha Pranavaha. In the Yoga Sutras, the word Om is said to be the name of the Supreme Lord or Ishvara. So the current explanation does not contradict that. This explanation is given in a different perspective. That explanation is given in a different perspective. So there is no contradiction between these two. So here what happens? See, Pranavandan Asamhita Karattare Moonraksharamai. When you split the Sandhi, what happens? You have 3 alphabets, namely A, U, and M or Makara. And all the 3 syllables depict or convey 3 different meanings. If you consider these 3 as independent components of the pranava. Samhita karattale ekaksharamai. But since they have joined together and become a single syllable, then it is considered as one single alphabet only. Om. And in this context, the second interpretation, where the pranava is considered to be as a single syllable, then it conveys a single meaning. So if you consider it, when you split the sandhi and consider it as 3 different alphabets or syllables, it has 3 meanings. That interpretation also is very much pertinent and relevant. If you consider Om as a single syllable and a single word, and therefore it has a single meaning, that is also acceptable. Both these interpretations are very much acceptable. What it means, how that meaning is derived, etc., we will see in the next class. So now, if you have any questions or any feedback, you are welcome to give it.
Swami, thank you very much. Regarding the mantra, the Astakshara mantra,
yes,
there are some Vaishnava traditions where they say that there are certain people who should not chant Pranava. There are certain people who should not chant Omkara. Even there are certain people who should not chant even the Chaturthi Vibhakti Aya. And examples are given from Puranas and different Shastras in other Rahasya Granthas of, for instance, Deshika Sampradaya, where people have chanted Namo Narayana or just the word Narayana, there is some explanation that some people should chant Am instead of Om. Can you comment on that?
I think we have briefly discussed about this in one of the earlier classes also. So there is one school of thought which says that the pranava should not be chanted by ladies and also the persons belonging to the Shudra community. Kindly don't mistake me when I am calling a community by a name. So please do not mistake me. This is what I am mentioning, what is mentioned in the Shastras, because today the word Shudra has a very bad connotation, though it's not so actually. Because the Indian tradition very specifically says that women and Shudras, Shudras are the 4th class of, I don't call it a caste, I call it a class. Because classification is mandatory in any society. You cannot have a class, you can try to have a casteless society, but you cannot have a classless society. So class may be based on age, it may be based on intellectual capability or physical capability, etc. So the Shastras specifically prohibit those belonging to Shudra, persons belonging to Shudra community, and also persons whose gender is women, female, who are females, not to practice the Vedas. It says, Nastri Shudru Vedam Adhiyata. And nowadays, the modern thinkers, especially those who are influenced by the British, they actually misinterpret this rule, saying that they have discriminated. So the Indian seers have discriminated against women. They have discriminated against the Shudras. So I have been specifically making this sort of usage. They have not discriminated, they have distinguished. Discrimination is different, distinction is different. So why the ladies and also the persons belonging to Shudra community should not chant the Vedas, why they should not learn the Vedas in the formal manner. So my Acharya and revered father, he gives a very modern but traditional explanation put in modern language. The system will not accept it. It is as simple as that. So he gives an example where you have a 486 computer, which was there long ago. Of course, in the 90s, earlier 2000, we had 286, 386, then 486, then you had Pentium or whatever it is. Of course, now names themselves have changed. You have Core 2 Duo, Core i2, Core i7 or something like that. The name of the chip or whatever it is. So if you put a 64-bit Windows software, you install it on the 486 computer, immediately it will crash. Because the hardware is not capable of supporting the software of that extent. So this is universally accepted by one and all because it is our experience. Unless the hardware is capable of supporting the software, the system will crash. So the human system has different categories, among which the system of women or the system of the Shudras are actually, they have come into being in a different manner. They are created in a different manner than the others. Is it purely based on birth or is it based on quality? That's a different question which has to be explained in another context. So we have the famous story of Parashurama and Karna in the Mahabharata. So Karna actually disguised himself as a Brahmin and came to learn the Dhanurvidya, or the art and science of the, archery, from Parashurama, who had made a vow that he'll teach only Brahmins and not Kshatriyas, because he hated Kshatriyas. That's a different, why he hated, is it correct or not, that's a different question which is not pertinent now. So when Parashurama, the master or the preceptor, was resting on the lap of his disciple Karna, it is said it comes in the story that Indra himself came as a bee and he bit Karna so much so that blood started oozing out of his thigh. And soon there was blood all over, and Parashurama, the preceptor, he awoke. And he said, "Why did you not wake me up? When a bee has bit you so intensely and there is so much of blood oozing out of the wound, why didn't you wake up?" Then Karna said, "No, master, I didn't. You were sleeping, you were fast asleep. I didn't want to disturb." Then he said, "How could you withstand so much of pain when blood is oozing out of the wound that is caused by the biting of the bee?" Then Karna said, "I somehow withstood." Then Parashurama asked, "No, you are telling a lie. A Brahmin can never withstand such pain. You are a Kshatriya. Please don't lie to me. That's what he said. Then immediately Karna was taken aback and he said, yes, I am a Kshatriya. Actually, I am not a Kshatriya. I am not a Brahmin. What I am, I don't know. I have been brought up by a charioteer, so I don't know who I am. I don't know my origins. I know I am the foster son of a charioteer. So it is even today in India, I don't know whether it is pertinent to mention all these things. A certain class of people are there who cannot actually sustain, or they cannot withstand rather. They cannot withstand the pain of heart surgery. So they actually, if heart surgery on the heart is conducted, they actually die instantly. That I have heard from very close qualified doctors who mention that in a, they don't mention it openly, they mention it in secrecy. So each system has its own capability to withstand certain things, to not be able to withstand certain things. So in the modern context, that is how my father interprets it. He says, the system will not accept it. It will not withstand it. So very simply, this is the answer. So each system has its own capabilities and capacities. So the other school of thought which says, don't use the Pranava, Am Namo Narayana. It is mentioned with that intent in mind. So whether this is correct or that is correct, we cannot say this is totally wrong, that is totally wrong. It depends on the viewpoint. So as of now, I would like to end by saying these two schools of thought exist. Each has its own merits.
Right. So, okay. So we understand that there are different traditions, and
Yes.
people have faith in their tradition, and they should follow their tradition and their acharyas.
Yes,
That's fine. Completely fine. So I had some other question. You also mentioned Narayana Upanishad, and in Narayana Upanishad, it says, Vaikunta Bhuvana Lokam Gamishyati. It says that the person who worships, I won't say the person who chants, but I say the person who worships Narayana iti mantra upasaka. He's an upasaka of not just chanting, but he should know the meaning and he should employ it correctly. He will go to Vaikunta Bhuvana Lokam. So, but at the end of the Upanishad, it says, Narayana Sayujam Avapnoti, Narayana Sayujam Avapnoti, Shriman Narayana Sitam. So, are we to understand that Sayujam means going to Vaikuntha Lokam, or Sayujam is a separate thing?
Of course, Vaikuntha Bhavana Lokam Gamishyati and then Sayujam, because as you know, I'm sure you would be knowing, there are 4 stages of Moksha, that is Salokya, Sarupya, Samipya and Sayujam. So Salokya is attaining the same world or same loka or whatever you would like to call it. Then Samipya, attaining the proximity of the Lord. Then Sarupya, attaining the same form. It is said that he even grants his Shankha Chakra, etc. to the Muktatma, because it is mentioned as Niranjanaha Paramam Samyam Upaiti. He becomes almost like the Lord. And then Sayujya. So it is mentioned as Sayujo, that is Sayujya is what? Samana Guna Yoga. He also comes to have all the auspicious qualities of the Supreme Lord, except for a few. That is what is mentioned in the final Adhikarana of the Brahma Sutras, where it says Jagat Vyaparavartam, etc. He becomes equal in all respects to the Lord, except for a few aspects, like he will not be able to engage in the process of creation, sustenance and dissolution. He will not attain Lakshmi Shriyaf Patitva. He cannot become the consort of the Lord Lakshmi, etc. So except for these few, he becomes totally equal to the Lord in all respects. So that is Narayana Sayujyamavapnoti, Narayana Sayujyamavapnoti. It is mentioned twice to say that it really happens. But for that, as I mentioned, by means of the mantra, he has to attain the vision or the sakshatkara of the Supreme Lord, and then only it happens. And we have to attempt for that only and nothing else.
Right, so we have to understand that, so Sayuja does not mean a complete merging of the Jivatman and the Paramatman.
That is what, see, what happens is, some people mention it as complete merging. Even in the Pancharatra Samhitas, we have certain passages that say that he completely merges into the Supreme Lord, etc. But merging, whether you say he is totally equal to the Supreme Lord or whether he is one with the Lord, that is why it said, Niranjanaha Paramam Sam. So it's like almost he is another Lord himself. So in that way, because my Guru used to mention it, see, whatever word, whether you don't engage in some debate based on these words, because these are meant to give you only an inclination, because there is no word that is available to us that can describe that state of existence. So you say that he becomes totally one with the Lord, whether it is totally merging or whatever it is, ultimately some small difference still exists. That is why I have heard, I don't know whether it is true, in Chaitanya Sampradaya, in some Sampradaya, it says, Ishad Bheda Garbhaha Adheda. It is total monism with some small amount of difference or distinction. But whether it is total merging or not, how much ever we quarrel or we have differences of opinion or we debate, we will not be able to resolve the debate or issue, because we don't know, there is no word that very specifically depicts that state that we can understand as of. But that much is true. He becomes totally identical with the Lord. Whether it is identity or whether it is identical, that small thing exists.
Right.
Which,
so our understanding is that there is eternal kainkarya, there's service going on.
Yes. So when you say service, there has to be a servant and one servant.
And also the Veda says pasyanti surayaha. I cannot see somebody if I am that person. There has to be a separation.
That is why Sada Pasyanti Suryaha is there. But in another place it is mentioned, Yatra Atmaiva Sarvam Abhut Kyanakam Pashyet Kyanakam Vijanya. So there are different accounts, but we cannot say, we say this is correct only. Yes, we actually accept that view. But even the other view also we have to accept. So it depends. That is why my Guru used to say there is also a very specific indication by Ramanujacharya stating that even in Vaikuntha, a person, a soul, can opt to decide without possessing a body. That is very important point which generally other scholars don't say. So when he doesn't possess a body even in Vaikuntha, what is his nature? His nature is very much similar to the nature of the Lord himself. So whether he engages in Kainkariya without a body or with body, that those issues we cannot discuss or resolve now. But as far as we are concerned, we say he is engaged in servitude only, because that is the nature of the jiva. So merging is not actually mentioned very specifically. As Shri Vaishnavas, we don't want to merge, we want to serve him only. Even if there is a stage, assuming that there is such a stage, hypothetically, we don't want that. We want to engage in service only.
Right, and so then there are these four types of moksha, each beginning with
they are conducive for a person to engage in service.
Right, but there's also
he becomes like the Lord, but still serves the Lord.
Yeah, there's also this idea of kaivalya, and how is kaivalya different from
kaivalya?
Sayuja?
Is once again it has been interpreted as he will never, the person who has attained kaivalya, he will never come to the portals of Paramapada or Vaikuntha. He will stay outside. He may enjoy some bliss, but it is not comparable to the bliss that a jivatma or individual soul enjoys when he is in Vaikuntha.
So
that is once again a very, very subtle and very, what to say,
technical.
a topic that is much debated upon, but not much clarity is available.
So if
Based
Kaivalya
on the,
is,
based on the
is outside of
words of our acharyas.
is Kaivalya is outside of Vaikuntha.
Yes, that is how it has been described.
But my understanding was that in Tenacharya Sampradayam, Kaivalya can also be a permanent situation.
Yes, it is mentioned as permanent where he engages in enjoying the bliss of the Jivatma alone, and he will not come to attain or experience the bliss of the Paramatma. So it is that is why it is called as Kevalasya Bhavaha Kaivalya. So he is interested in his own the bliss associated with the individual self rather than the supreme self. That is why it is known as Kaivalya according to our Sampradaya.
But if it is not in Vaikuntha, then how can it be permanent? Because we understand
that is why I said there is a lot of debate in this regard without much clarity. So it is not too much worthwhile debating about it. They say he will be outside Vaikuntha, but whether it is physically you have rooms and places like this or not it's a very complicated question which cannot be very clearly answered by anybody, because it is based on some of the textual references that are available. But we are not able to resolve this in a very proper manner because it is totally otherworldly and we have no experience whatsoever about this.
So also you were mentioning in the beginning of the class about the Sadvida Sharanagati. There are 6 aspects to Sharanagati.
Yes.
But I think it seems like Sri Vaishnavas count 5 aspects, and the 6th aspect is actually Sharanagati or property.
Sorry, please repeat it. 5 as?
Can you explain? You said these are stages. Are they stages? Are they qualifications? Are they prerequisites? Are they post-requisites? Are they qualities?
No, it is stages only because one follows the other. So first anukulyasya sankalpaha, that is the first thing. Then pratikulyasya vardhanam. I'll explain it in detail in another class.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I have one further question, very little technical question, that we see that everything that we do, there's the idea of sattvika tyaga is there. You said we don't want the fruits of anything that we do.
Yeah.
So we do the sattvika tyaga. So the Tenacharya Sampradaya and the Deshika Sampradaya have different ways of doing the sattvika tyaga. The Deshika Sampradaya, they do very formally. They are doing it very formally.
No, Tenacharya Sampradaya cannot give up sattvika tyaga because Ramanujacharya himself has mentioned it in the beginning itself of the Nitya Grantha.
Nitya Grantha, right? I was going to say it's in Nitya Grantha. So there's no problem if in Tenacharya Sampradaya we can also say Bhagavaneva Swaniyamya Swarupa Sthiti Pravritti.
Yes, by all means it has to be said.
I see.
So it has not been given importance because if a person has already overcome his kartritva or his agency, if he has already overcome his agency, there is no need to say. Because only if he thinks that I am doing, then you have to say I have given all the fruits, or it has been done by God, by himself, not me. And things like that. So openly or outwardly, it need not be said. Because already it is inherently, he has actually got that view. Therefore, that is the answer that is coming to my mind at this moment. I have to verify it with other scholars, probably my father or other scholars. So if I have already realized that, there might not be a need to explicitly mention that. Therefore, they might have not given it, mentioned it in their Thiruvaradhana Kramas, etc. But definitely, since Ramanujacharya himself has mentioned it in the beginning of the Nitya Grantha, definitely we also accept it and respect it. So I think I'll conclude with the
We can conclude. Thank you so much.
Ached Ramanujetyesha Chatura Chaturakshari कामवस्थां प्रपद्यन्ते जन्तवो हन्तमादृशः पुण्यां भोज विकासाय पापध्वान्तक्षयाय च श्रीमानाविरभूत् भूमौ रामानुज दिवाकरः ऋणीकृतविरिञ्चादिनिरङ्कुशविभूतयः रामानुजपदाम्भोज समाश्रयेण शालिनः।